Welcome, and thanks for joining us online. This week, we jump into our new series called Heart Attack. It's the second of our series that we work to uncover the truths that Jesus shared with his Sermon on the Mount. Hope you enjoy.
Hey, good morning, Flatirons. We good? Good. So right now, we have 5 campuses linked together. After the first year, we have a 6th campus over in Brighton. That's coming. But for you that are listening online, at all of our campuses, all of our bands just played this song by 30 Seconds to Mars, and you're just staring at a yellow screen. You're welcome. But that's copyright stuff. It's beyond our control. But anyway, so a couple months ago, the worship leader up at Longmont, Mark Bartels, he brought me this song called Rescue Me. And so just listen to the song. And so I'm listening to it. And at first I'm going, I don't know if I like this song. And then the more I listened to it, it actually, I said, I want to use this the weekend that I talk about anger, which is what we're going to talk about today. Because there's some really interesting lines in there. The first concept, it's actually a conversation the guy's having. It starts in his head and then to some higher source. I'm assuming it's God. I don't know Jared Leto's, who knows? But anyway, so that's the singer. Oh, never mind. Anyway, and the conversation goes something like this. How am I going to save myself? I have to sell my soul to something. I have to sell out if I'm ever going to rescue myself. Or will you rescue me? So I'm either going to save myself or I'm going to look to somebody outside myself to rescue me. And it's that back and forth conversation about I'm facing this big thing in my life. And one way or the other, there's like 2 deals on the table. That's what Jesus is going to teach us today. Are you going to save yourself or are you going to go to somebody else? And that's what I want to talk about today, right? So I want to pick up right where we left off last week. And if you weren't able to be here or you were out of town or you're on vacation or it snowed or whatever it is, you can always get online and go back. Because if I say something today, you're not going to be lost if you weren't here in the past, but it may make you think, like, I want to know more about that. And so you can always get online and go back and kind of catch up with what we've been covering over the last few weeks. But we're in the middle of this Sermon on the Mount. It's a sermon that Jesus gave on the side of a hill, a mountain in Israel about 2,000 years ago. And I just want to bring it up really, really carefully, and then we're going to hit some new stuff today. But it starts with Jesus saying, like, can I have your attention? I'm going to teach you something, and I want you to listen very, very carefully to it because I want to teach you that something that wasn't possible is now possible for ordinary people like you. All right, and as you do that, hopefully, you're gonna, and the word he uses is repent, rethink everything. Meaning this is that as you listen to Jesus and what he has to say, he says, I want you to take a look at your own thoughts and your own ideas and your definitions about God, about yourself, and about people around you, all right? And then I want you to hear what I have to say. And then as you begin to know me more and trust me more, hopefully you'll begin to rethink your ideas and start to take on some of the ideas and thoughts and definitions that I have. The Bible calls that, a guy named Paul actually says, when we start to do that, that's called having the mind of Christ. I want to think like Jesus. So if I think like Jesus, I see the world like Jesus sees him. And what Jesus says is when you begin to do that, when you begin to think like Jesus and see others, people, and the world like Jesus, then what comes out of you is more like Jesus. And that the word that he uses, we've been learning Greek, because we're such a spiritual church, all right? So we're going to learn more words today, all right? But the word that Jesus uses to describe the kind of life that you can live, he uses this Greek word called makarios. Remember this? Makarios is this, and everybody on the side of that hill knew exactly what he's talking about. They just didn't think it was possible for ordinary people like them who had made so many mistakes in their life. But he says this, you can have makarios, blessed life, all right? A life lived with God. Not God in outer space, not God that you're waiting to meet after your funeral, God here, with God, all day long, all right? You can live a with God kind of life in an intimate connection and conversational friendship with God. And Jesus, this kind of blew their minds. Jesus didn't say, hey, if you want to be in the kingdom, you have to act better and stop doing that and change this and clean up your life and stuff like that. And if you'll do that, then I'll let you come into my kingdom. That's how most of us were raised. Right? You got to be good enough, and then God will accept you. And Jesus says that actually it's the opposite. Don't try to change. Just come as you are, mess and all, guilt and shame, all that kind of stuff. Come as you are. And here's what, when you step into my kingdom, I'll do something good in you that will actually change you, like the kind of person you are. I'll make you good on the inside so that what comes out of you just naturally is good. And so last week we kind of kicked off that we're breaking this into series or sections as we work through this talk Jesus gave. It's the longest talk Jesus gave in the whole Bible. It takes 3 chapters to cover it all. But Jesus is he started last week, and this is what we're going to look at today. He said there's 2 possible ways that people kind of approach life to answer these big questions like who's a good person? And how do you know if you have a good life? What does it mean to have a good life? Now, these are questions that we've been asking over and over for the last several months in here, but philosophers and theologians and like scholars have been trying to find this, determine the answers to those questions for centuries. Who's a good person, and how do you know they're good, and how do you know if you have a good life or not? And the word that Jesus borrows, he borrows a word from Greek philosophy to refer to this inner goodness thing going on. So he borrows a word from Greek, and then he also borrows a word from Hebrew theology about this goodness. In the Bible, it's called righteousness of God, and he puts them together, and he uses this word, dikaiosune. All right, let's just say it together. 1, 2, 3. See, that's Greek, and dikaiosune it answers this question. What it is in God, or what it is in you, or her, or whatever, or what is you point to in a life that you go, that makes them good. I look at God, or I look at you, or I look at her, whatever, and I go, that alone, that's enough. That actually qualifies and makes them good. And I'll be honest with you, my favorite line that I came up with last week, let me pat myself on the back there, it was awesome, was this. I just love this. The dikaiosune, the goodness of God, it's Jesus. If you want to know, like, how can I be sure God's good? Because life doesn't feel good right now. My life just got wiped out by a hurricane, or we're facing cancer, or there's a car wreck, or there's addiction, or there's betrayal, and there's divorce, and there's all this stuff going on, and my life doesn't feel good. How can I know that God is good? And God would go, just look at my son Jesus. Just look at my son Jesus. Look at him and get to know him. And here's where a lot of us, if we've been raised in any form of religion at all that had to do with Jesus, there's a lot of us, we hear stuff like that. It's just babble. It's like, I've heard about Jesus all my life. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about getting to know the real one, because there's a lot of bad versions of Jesus out there being shoved down people's throats, all right? And Jesus going, I think a lot of Jesus in heaven going, I didn't say that. Do not blame that on me. I'm nothing like that, all right? But let's get to know me. Get to know me and what I think about stuff and how I see things and what I believe about God and how I see you. And when I see people like that, the way I treated them. And if you spend time with me, it's just like any other relationship. If you hang out with somebody long enough, eventually you kind of begin to think like one another, and you actually know what to do without them even telling you or asking you what to do. You actually begin to think alike, right? And Jesus says that's the goal. It's the goal of life. I don't know what your goal is for your life. I want to know Jesus more. As a matter of fact, Jesus says that's the definition of eternal life. It's not what happens after your funeral. Jesus says in John 17, this is eternal life. Get to know me. Just get to know me. And this is really, really important, okay? Jesus makes it clear that he's not going to do some magic spell on your heart and all of a sudden, I'm a good person. I don't know. I wasn't yesterday. Today I am. That's not how it works. He's saying, no, that's part of it, but let me make this really, really clear. I didn't come to abolish all the things that you've learned in God's word. I haven't come to abolish all the laws and commandments that came from God's word. Because if you really analyze it, the motivation for every command, and usually when we think about like rules or commandments from God, we always feel like they're really restrictive and confining. But if you really leaned into them, the motivation and the purpose of every one of God's commands, from the 10 Commandments to all the other ones, all right, was his heart and his desire to provide for you the best environment for you to have this dikaiosune kind of life. And the other reason those commands are out there is to protect you from anything or anyone that would try to take that away from you. If you really analyze all the commands, it's trying to provide something good for you and protect something bad from taking it away from you. But by the time Jesus shows up, about 2,000 years ago, religion, or the version of dikaiosune or goodness or righteousness that's being shoved down people's throats by religious leaders, was so corrupted and so broken. And just, again, the world doesn't change. And unfortunately, religion doesn't change and churches don't change. A lot of us walked away from church or organized religion because it was so corrupt and it was so broken and it was so manipulative and it was just trying to force us to be somebody that we're not. And that's what Jesus walked into. The religion that Jesus walked into had cared little or nothing about a person's heart. I can't find anything in religion back in Jesus' day that even cared about somebody's heart or what was going on inside. Or it had nothing to do. I don't find any phrase even similar to you can have a relationship or a friendship with God. The religion that Jesus walked into is, again, like a lot of us were raised, all it cared about was Are you keeping the right rules and not breaking the bad ones? Right? So what are you drinking? What are you eating? What do you have on? Who are you hanging out with? What kind of movies do you go to? I'll go with it. All that kind of stuff. It was only concerned about actions and behaviors. And here's the truth. And again, most of us have lived this. That version of religion was actually having the opposite effect on people. It was actually making them worse. Religion was actually driving people away from God. It certainly wasn't calling them to a good life. It's certainly not a dikaiosune kind of good. And what Jesus is going to teach is this. Just take a breath. Just listen to me. And just watch me. And just follow me. And listen, over the next 3 years, I'll begin to describe for you, and I'll personally demonstrate for you what a good, dikaiosune kind of life looks like, lived out. And he's going to do that all the way up to his crucifixion and resurrection. He'll do it by his own example. But in this sermon we're going to keep on going through today, here's what he's going to do. He's going to lay out for us 6 real-life circumstances, and we're going to cover them all the way through Thanksgiving, that every one of us, and they're real. I mean, they're in your face real. They're not hypothetical, like some people someday somewhere on the earth might. No, these are things that everybody listening to my voice right now has been in, is in right now, or you will be by Tuesday. I'm not a prophet, but it will happen. All right, and what he's going to do is, this is a normal, everyday circumstance, and it can go good or bad. What he's going to do is, he's going to take, first of all, the old way, the old religious way of approaching that kind of circumstance to know if you're good and if you did the right thing there. And then he's going to put beside that what he says is a better way to live, a better way to interact, and a better way to respond. I'm going to say this, a kingdom kind of response. Now that I'm living in the kingdom, I'm going to respond differently to the people in front of me. Might be my friend, might be my family, might be my enemy. But the only way, and this is really important, the only way that these new types of interactions and responses are going to be possible for you to live out is not because you went to church enough, read the Bible enough, read the 10 Commandments, some scrolls out there, had religion shoved down your throat, and you tried really hard, and you finally pulled it off, and you were good. That has never worked for any of us or any human being. Nobody has forced themselves to be good and become a good person. No, the only way Jesus says that this kingdom kind of response is going to come out of you is if you'll step into the kingdom of heavens with God, and over time, because it's going to take time, because growth takes time. This is not going to happen by Tuesday. Don't put the pressure on yourself. I got to be like Jesus by tomorrow. You'll fail. It's a journey, okay? But it's going to take some time. We call that spiritual formation. But over time, Jesus is going to say this. You're not going to read it in a book. The Bible's important. I'm not doing away with that. You're not going to get it from a church service. The church is important, stuff like that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something inside of you. What's that, Jesus? I'm going to write my law of love on your heart. I'm going to write it in your heart, and then your heart's going to change. And then out of a changed heart, you're a different kind of person. And without even trying, that's just what you do. Why? Because that's who you are. Because my heart's changed, right? So let me kind of put it in 2 concise phrases, all right? So we don't obey God's commandments as a requirement to become good. Again, that's how I was raised. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, and you always better do that, and every time you ought to do that, whatever, because if not, then you're a bad person, right? This is how a lot of us are raised. But that's not what Jesus is going to teach. How about this? We obey God's commands because we're becoming the good kind of people that God's goodness naturally flows out of our changed hearts. What kind of heart? A dikaiosune kind of heart, a Jesus kind of heart. He lives in my heart and he's changing it. Everybody with me? So here we go. All right, we're going to get into the first real life circumstance that, again, everybody is in it right now, has just come out of it, or you're about to go into it, okay? We're in Matthew chapter 5 at all of our campuses, all right? There are Bibles in the back. Pick one up on your way out, because if all the campuses have horrible lighting like this, and the font is it's stupid. The content's great. The letters are tiny, all right? So this is Jesus talking, Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, all right? So, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, time out. That's his way of going. So this is what we've been taught all our life. This is the old way. This is the law of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, that version of being good, all right? So you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder. Anybody heard that one before? It's a big one. All right, so thou shalt not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. And so Jesus starts with one of the big 10 commandments that was given by God to a guy named Moses on a mountain on some stone tablets. And he brings back and says, don't murder one another. And again, why did God give that commandment? Well, that's the heart and motivation behind every command. It's very simple, all right? I'm gonna give you a commandment, right? Not to hem you in and ruin your life. How about this? I'm gonna say, do not murder one another because I wanna protect you from somebody else around you that takes it upon themselves to be your judge, jury, and executioner. That's the definition of murder. You're not allowed to do that to her, and they're not allowed to do that to you. That's protective, right? I also wanna provide an environment where the sanctity and the holiness of human life is actually protected and honored. God is in every one of us. His image and his likeness is in every one of us. And when we don't murder one another, we respect. Listen, no matter what comes up in me, there's something about you that I cannot do to you what I want to do to you. And we're going to talk about it in just a minute, right? Now, Jesus starts out by saying this about murder. The old law commands, and it's only care and concerned about, is this: just don't murder him. And if you do, you'll be judged, all right? So this is all the law cared about. Don't literally murder anybody or you'll get in trouble. All right? What do you mean get in trouble? You mean go to hell? Well, I think so. All right, so translated this way, okay? This is the assumption they jump to, all right? As long as you've never literally murdered anyone, it's proof that you must be a good person. And we all know that's not true, right? Last night I almost said, raise your hand if you ever murdered anybody. And then I thought, oh, no. Don't do that. Your section will clear out. It was a bad day, right? Whatever that is. All right, so, no, what I mean is this. We all know people that have never literally murdered somebody, but they're still the worst people ever, right? If that's what you're clinging on to go, no, I'm a good person because I've never murdered anybody, but you got to get the bar a little higher, right? So we know that's not true. And Jesus is about to shed light on what the heart and the motivation of God's commandment around what makes or keeps a person from experiencing dikaiosune. And so he says, let's dig into that. You've heard it said, this is what all religions cared about. Let's just dig a little deeper. And so he says this, but I tell you, so I'm gonna put a new spin on it, a new perspective, that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. And he uses the same word for the judgment you get from murdering somebody. You get the same judgment if you're angry with one another. Now look at this. Context is king. And the people back then on that mountain are just like us. So whatever you're thinking about right now internally, they were thinking of the same thing. What do you mean? What? What? You're gonna jump right to the assumption that Jesus handed out more rules and more laws, and I have to obey the laws or I'll go to hell, right? That's what I'm immediately jumping to, right? So you're sitting here right now and you're trying to figure out what is Jesus saying? Jesus, are you saying this? Is Jesus saying that it's a sin to get angry or mad at somebody when they do something wrong or hurtful to you or somebody else? Is that what you're doing? Are you telling me I'm gonna go to hell if I get mad at somebody that does me or hurts my family? Is that what you're saying? Because be honest with you, Jesus, if that's what you're saying, I'm out. Right? Is that what Jesus is saying? It's not realistic, is it? Is Jesus saying, don't ever get angry? And again, we've been brought up to that so many times. It's like, if you really love Jesus, you won't get mad at her. Well, then I must not love Jesus because I'm mad. Kids in the room, clean that up, right? So is Jesus commanding us as Christians to never get mad? No. Some of you going, we can come back, all right? So remember this? Look at this. Jesus didn't come to pass out more rules and laws to make or break. He didn't say, I didn't come to lay more stuff on you that you won't be able to do that either, all right? And please hear this. Jesus is not saying that it's a sin to ever become angry. He didn't say that. Well, how can you say that, Pastor Jim? Because the Bible gives circumstance after circumstance where actually getting angry is the right thing to do. Right? And I know it's not a sin because over and over in the Bible, I find places where God gets angry. There's one story in there about Jesus getting so angry, he went into the temple and they turned it into, they're ripping people off, and he's like, I'll be back. And he leaves, all right? And it says he goes and makes a whip. Who does that? He's like, Yeah, I'll be right back. And he goes to the store and goes, I need some whip stuff. All right. Shaboom. And he walks in and he throws furniture around and he drives people out. Why? Because he was angry and he was supposed to be angry. He was supposed to be angry. And this is what Jesus is getting at, right? How about this? There's a guy named Paul. He says this in Ephesians chapter 4. He says, be angry. It's a command. Think about it. You probably never heard this in church. The Bible says that there's some stuff in your life you should be more angry about than you are. There's stuff worth getting angry about. Be angry. Here's the rest of the sentence though. But in your anger, do not sin. So anger and sin are not the same thing. Let's just call it out though. But when you're angry, it sure is easy to sin. Isn't it? It sure is. So what is Jesus getting at? What is he really getting at? Well, do you remember what we're trying to uncover here? What is God's intent? What's the heart of what he's trying to provide or protect us from in every one of his commandments? So if anger is a normal thing, I would even go so far as to say it's a God-given thing, right? And it's trying to it's the right response to come up, all right? So here's the question I want to get to, all right? What is Jesus referring to in this new or different kind of response when we get angry, and the kingdom kind of response? Now that I'm in the kingdom, I know how I used to respond to anger. What's this different response to anger? So we're going to define some terms real quick, all right? So we're all on the same page because we all have different versions of when I say anger, what comes to mind. Let me throw one out to you. How about this? Anger is the natural response, normal, right? Sometimes right even, all right? Response to a person or a situation that stands in the way of you getting what you think that you need to be happy or content or safe or secure or enough. That's what I need, and you're in my way. Or you're trying to take it away from me. And my response is, that makes me angry. If somebody hurts you by their actions or their words, something comes up in us and I get angry. Or if somebody does something that interferes with me moving towards my goal or my plan for my life. If somebody, how about this, doesn't do what they promised, you promised me. We took vows. And you said you would always, and then I expect you to do that. Then I come home and you're not doing that at all. And I'm angry if someone does something and their choices and the consequences of their choices land on you in a really hurtful, destructive way. And you had no say in it. You didn't get a vote on it. It just landed on you. Our first, natural response usually is anger. And the reason that God has given us anger is it motivates us to respond in a way that actually, maybe hopefully, will restore what's right. Right? Move towards right, or at least, take away what has been threatened or return what has been taken from us. So anger is just a response to that's taking something from me or standing in my way of what I need. Well, what's murder? Murder is this. How about this? Murder is like the ultimate step. This is so poetic. I love it. All right. Murder is like the ultimate step on a road or a journey paved with stones of anger and then contempt and then hatred, and then violence. And what's this journey? What's this road? Where's it been going? What's been progressing and building and building and building? Anger. And I'm not just talking about anger, because anger is not necessarily a bad thing. What kind of anger has been growing? How about this? Unresolved. I don't know what to do with it, all right? Repressed, and we all do this all the time. I'm the king of this. It doesn't matter. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. Held on to, growing, and we're going to end today with that word, festering, anger. I mean, if you were honest, if you were to look at almost every circumstances that ended up with someone being attacked with the intent of wounding them or ending their life, literally or figuratively, we talked about this, if you go back, if you go upstream far enough, almost every time you will find anger that was not dealt with, it was not resolved to the murderer, their satisfaction. And so over time, it just continued to build and build and build and build and flow downstream until finally it just hit something, it exploded, and it ended in somebody or something dying. Physically, emotionally, relationally. How many things in our life can we look at and go, it just got murdered? Why? My story is this, because I was mad. I was mad what they did to me and what they took from me and how they treated me. And nobody's gonna do anything about it, so I had to take it upon myself. And so I did to them what I felt like they deserved. Does that make sense? Now hold on to that, okay? Because Jesus doesn't stop there, right? He actually, he throws in something that I've always skipped over because I didn't know how, I don't know what those verses are doing in there, and I just skip on to the next one, all right? But Jesus is going to address what I'm going to call anger's evil twin, because you always see them together, all right? And we're going to unpack this new word, right? So Jesus just talked about all this murder stuff. Look at this. Again, you've heard it said, all right? Anyone who says to a brother, Raka, and I'll explain this in a minute, is answerable to the court. And so there's a law in the books that says if you say Raka to another person, you could get hauled to religious court. You go, what's the big deal of religious court? I don't know. They crucified Jesus. They got some clout. It's a big deal, all right? So if you say Raka to somebody, you can get hauled to court, religious court, and be held accountable. But I say, anyone who says, you fool, you'll be in danger of the what? Come on, kids, the what? Now, we're going to unpack that because it may not mean what you think it means, all right? So Raka. Raka is an Aramaic word, okay? So we learned a new word in another language. And Aramaic is the local language in the area of Israel where Jesus grew up. And Raka is actually a word, or it's really more like a sound that you would say to somebody when you're trying to communicate to them that you think that they are the lowest form of human life on the planet, at best. All right, and the word probably isn't even a real word. It's like there's a sound, and they put some letters in there so they can make a word out of it. But the sound is the sound of you clearing your throat to try to bring up enough phlegm or whatever that is to get a really good loogie going, and then you spit it in somebody's face. Now, so I'm going, that's gross, Jim. I know, but that in Jesus' day, that was the culture. If you met somebody that you absolutely despised, you would spit in their face. Now, what are you trying to communicate if you spit in somebody's face? It's not good, right? You're nothing. You're nothing. And then Jesus pairs that up with, you fool, to kind of complete the insult, all right? And it goes like this. How about this, right? Raka means you don't matter, what you think doesn't matter, and what happens to you, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because you're nothing. This is what Raka communicates. And the closest word in the English language to Raka that we could have would be the word contempt. I feel nothing but contempt for you, right? And okay, we're really going to push into this too. And the phrase in our language that comes the closest to this, and I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to allude to it, is a straight up F you. That's what it means, all right? Well, that's offensive. That's why we have kids ministry, all right? All right, so what you're saying is this: I don't care about you. When you flip somebody off or when you blank you, whatever that is, what you're communicating is, I don't care about you. I don't care what happens to you. I don't care if the worst thing happens to you. I don't care if you get screwed, molested, used, abused, or killed. I don't care, because it's all you're good for. It's what you deserve. It probably serves you right. That's what it means, all right? Now think about this. And this is why you always find anger and contempt always paired together, all right? Because if I get angry when somebody does something to me, I want to do something back to them, or I want to make them pay. But I can't do to you what I want to do to you if I continue to see you and value you as God sees you. So if I want to do to you what I really want to do to you, all I have to do is redefine you as something different than who God says you are and what you're worth. And now all bets are off, and I can do whatever I want to you. Does that make sense? I want to hurt you, but I can't hurt you if I see you like God sees you. So I'll just change who you are, and now I can do anything I want. See, again, Jesus is not passing out like new improved laws about let's stop cussing and let's not call people names and stuff like that. Although the world would be a better place if we did that, all right? But what he's saying is this. He's saying, listen, when you begin to treat another person different than what God says they are, or God says their value is. What do you mean? When you begin to treat people like they're objects or throw away people that are in your way to be used or abused as you see fit, Jesus says, be careful. And it's not because the fires of hell, he's not saying, I'll revoke your salvation. All right? He's not saying that. Those are rules and regulations. What he's saying is this: it's very possible that when you begin to treat people like that and see people like that, that you'll end up being thrown out on. And Jesus is so smart, and he uses a metaphor there that everybody there got, but we don't get, because the phrase he uses refers to every town had a wall around it, and outside the city wall, there was a city dump where you burned all your trash that nobody wanted. And the name for the city dump was Gehenna, and it translated out of the Aramaic, fires of hell. It's where you threw all the stuff that you didn't want anymore. And what he's saying is be careful, because anger and contempt have a way of backfiring and hurting you. to a much bigger degree than what you were hoping to inflict on another person. Isn't that a lot of our stories? Right? I was angry, and so I did something. I showed them I won. And now the regret and the consequences go on and on and on and on. Not for them. I don't even know where they are anymore. I don't know if they think about this anymore. I don't even know if remember that it happened. I remember it every single day. I have all the consequences. That didn't help at all. Think about this, all right? Think about the connection of some of the things that Jesus is going to cover if you've read the rest of this chapter over the next several weeks. At their root, upstream, you will always find anger and contempt. I'll give you some, all right? Some spoiler alerts. Here's what we're going to cover between now and Thanksgiving. In a few weeks, we're going to talk about adultery, and that's sleeping with somebody that you're not married to, all right? Well, here's our story. All right, see, you married people or formerly married people, see if this feels any familiar, right? You were frustrated. Right? And you were angry by unmet expectations in your marriage, and your wants and your needs to be happy weren't being met, and you couldn't just do what you wanted to do without justification. And so here's what you wanted to do. Right? You redefined your spouse. You redefined your husband, you redefined your wife, or you redefined yourself as something different than who God says you are. And let me just talk to married people, right? The things we say to each other, the names that we call one another, to knock each other down. We demean them. We insult one another. We belittle them, all right? We hold them in absolute contempt, because if we can do that, listen, you can't cheat on a husband or a wife that you stood in front of God and were joined together in a holy union with God. You can't cheat on a jerk or an ass. And there's nobody in the world that should expect me to stay with a selfish witch. Kids in the room, all right? Shouldn't, but they are, all right? So, all right, here's something. I was lonely, and I was unhappy. It's not fair. And then you got angry, and you got frustrated, but you just can't go out and have sex with whoever you want to, because they're an image bearer of God. They're a likeness bearer of God. But I can do anything I want if I don't see her as that, if I just see her as just listen to music, all right? She's just a dog. You do anything you want to a dog. Female dog, you know what I'm talking about, right? I can do anything, I hear on the radio every day. You can do anything you want to a hoe or you can look at a computer screen. She doesn't have a name, he doesn't have a name. They're just an image. They're just a face. They're just a body part that I can use and focus on that body part. They're not even a person. They're just a body part that I can use to satisfy whatever I want to do to them. They're not human. They're not somebody's son. They're not somebody's daughter. They're an object, and we make them something else so that we can do to them whatever we want to do. Does that sound familiar? And that's how we get to where we go. How about this? We're angry about parts of our life, about our job or our career or about our finances or about the economy or about the shape of our country or whatever. And you have to blame somebody. And you can't take on the blame yourself or even own your part. So it must be, and then come all the racist, sexist, most dehumanizing names for people on the planet. And you're gonna blame all your problems on them. If they weren't here, if they got kicked out, if they didn't get special privileges or something like that, then my life would be good. But it's all because of that, and fill in the blank, right? So this is a risk. I'll get emails about this, but I don't care. Think about, you all right? Everybody okay? Think about what's going on in our political world. Just over the last couple weeks and months. And I'm not going to pick a side here because they're both jacked up, all right? Here's what I mean by that, all right? Everything can be traced back to anger. Everything. Anger. What do you mean? They won't let me do what I want to do. They won't let me have what I want to have. So I can attack people like that. What do you mean people like that? Well, I don't know. Tune into Fox News or CNN. They have a whole list of really disparaging, contemptuous names for the people that disagree with them. Now I can do anything I want, both sides, right? I can attack, I can hurt, I can destroy, I can murder anybody who stands in my way or disagrees with me. And the truth is, both sides on almost every issue would look at the other side and go, yeah, I'm angry. I'm gonna give you a new term, ready? Because you rocked me. What do you mean? You looked at me and what happened to me in my life and the things that are going on in my world, and you just dismissed me. You said my thoughts and my opinions don't matter because you don't like them or you don't understand them, all right? Listen, so you're saying if my thoughts and my life doesn't matter, then you're saying I don't matter. So yeah, I'm going to viciously attack everybody because I'm on the good side here. I'm on the righteous side here. I was wrong. I'm good. You're not. And what Jesus, the point of this all is Jesus is saying this: you left good behind long ago. The moment you said, I'm gonna hang on to anger, and I'm gonna let it fester for a while and grow and build. And this attack on you, this murder, that was a long time in the making. You hanging with me? Now, so we're talking about anger. I'm gonna make some of you anger. I'm gonna end my talk right here. Some of you going, no, don't leave us there. I know. All right, anyway, so here's what I'm gonna pick up right next week, right here, this part. This is the only time you ever said, keep talking, kids ministry. All right, there you go. So anyway, so I'm gonna pick up right here next week with what Jesus says is the only way to deal with that so it doesn't keep on killing all the important parts of our life. All right? How are we gonna deal with pent up, held on to, festering, life-killing, relationship murdering, heartbreaking anger? And spoiler alert, I'm gonna give you a worse F word: forgiveness. And here's where some of you immediately jump to, I'm out. Why even come back? Because if you or Jesus or whoever is saying that I have to forgive him or her, I can't do it, and I won't do that, so I'm not even gonna try. Okay, then don't. Right? But the question that we're gonna get to is this: am I willing to trust God to handle and deal with whatever it is that has attacked me and has left me angry? And do I want anything to change? Remember, anger isn't always a bad thing. Anger actually wants a good thing to happen, right? It's that back in the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. You have a hunger and thirst to see something made right. But what are you gonna do if you can't make it right now? Well, get angry, I guess. Look at this. This is pretty good. Look at this. And that sounds so arrogant. I just like that. Anyway, this is philosophy. Anger is to the heart when it feels attacked. So when your heart feels attacked, anger serves the heart in the same way that pain is to your hand when you touch a hot stove. All right, let that sink in. Anger does for your heart what pain does to your hand when you touch a hot stove. Meaning this: pain is a useful thing. It's a helpful thing to alert us that, hey, something's going on here. Something needs to change. Something needs to move, or something much worse is going to happen. But pain, all right, and anger, as useful as they are, were never something that God intended us to carry around for the rest of our lives and continually live with. Does that make sense? So here's my one Dallas Willard quote. It's just so good. Look at this. Non-forgiveness, I'm just not gonna do it. Non-forgiveness is a what? Isn't that hard to say? No, it's not. I can't. I've tried. I can't. Oh, okay. Non-forgiveness is a choice. What are you choosing to do? Keep a wound open and festering. That nails it. Because when you say that this anger thing that's going on in your life is this wound that's infected all the parts of your life. So I want to give you 2 or 3 questions to walk out of here with. Think about this week, all right? And then these are the questions that we're going to talk about in groups this week. And these questions are so tough. The only way you could ever really honestly answer them is if you actually had a safe place to actually do that. And that's what we're trying to create in groups. And if you're not in a group, it's not too late to get in a group. Just go out to your lobby right now or get online and go, I want to find a group because I need to work through some of these questions. But here's a few of the questions, all right? Like this. What is one example, and you probably have 50, but just narrow it down to one, all right? What's one example of growing, held on to anger in your life? And let's be honest, it was probably justifiable and completely reasonable kind of anger, but over the years, it has taken on a life of its own, right? And it has impacted, and it has hurt, and it has ruined, and you didn't say it's murdered parts of my life that I didn't think it was connected to at all. Anybody relate to that? It started about this, and then it's doing all this other stuff. So would you be willing just to look at that this week? Here's one practical application, okay? So when I'm angry or frustrated about stuff going on at home or finances or work stuff or whatever that is, my tell is traffic. I'm that guy, okay? And meaning this, if I have a lot of stuff pinned up inside of me and some Subaru cuts me off, I don't know why it's always a Subaru, it just is. I think God's playing a joke on me. I know there's so many in Colorado and the ratio of bad drivers, they have to be in front of me. Anyway, all right? But when they do that, all of this anger comes up on me about all this other stuff, and they get it. I'm right on their bumper. I'm Look in your rearview mirror. One way, buddy. Right. I've been pulled over several times. I've gone to anger management classes. Don't judge me. It's just me. All right. But here's what I'm going to challenge you to do, okay? There's a lot of judgment over there. I can just feel it over there. Kind of like, Hey, when you have a bad day at work or a bad day at marriage or a bad day at school, and you walk in the front door and your kid does something like that, or your wife, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or your mom, or your dad, or whatever, before you just murder them, would you just take a breath and go, it's not about you, it's about this. And would you just take a breath before you do what we always do and just drive up and let them know you're in my way? Just think about it. Okay, here's the second one, all right? How about this? Has there ever been a time in your life when you became the target or the victim of somebody else's anger? It had nothing to do with you, right? You just became the target because they used you to satisfy something that they wanted to satisfy, or they wanted to prove something to themselves or somebody else. Have you ever been the person on the receiving end of that? And here's a follow-up on that. If you had a time machine, magic bubble, whatever that is, and you could go back and you could have a conversation, what do you wish you could say to the person who took out their anger on you about what it did to you? Wouldn't that be, I don't know, scary? Because we've rehearsed it for years. All right, just hang on to it, right? Here's one more, right? Is there any situation or person, or how about this, groups of people, people like that, right? So is there any of that, right, that if you were to begin to see and value those people in the same way that God sees and values those people, would it make a difference in the way that you treat those people? How you refer to them, how you consider them, how you automatically dismiss them when they do something you don't like, you don't understand. Here's a big one. Would it make a difference in your jokes? When you just automatically say, did you hear the one about the? And it's a disparaging, contemptuous word for somebody that God really loves. And so, how about the magic time machine? What do you think that the person who's been the target of your misplaced anger would want to say to you right now? All right? Now, we're going to come back in here next week, and it's going to get tough. And some of you are sitting there going, I don't know if I want to deal with this. Okay, then let it flow. Let the anger just keep on rolling. Let it keep on destroying, and let it keep on killing, and murdering, and let's keep on devastating our kids, and let's lose another marriage, and let's lose another this, and let's just let it roll out of control. Because if that's all we want, I speak for myself. I want something better than that. I want something good. How good? Dikao Sune good? I do. And what's more than that, that's what Jesus wants for me. I want the same thing that Jesus wants for me. I think I can get there by beating the crap out of everybody that gets in my way. And Jesus says, are you willing to rethink that? Because I have something better if you're willing to just think about it. So that's what we're going to do. Let's stand up, all of our campuses. I'm going to pray. We're going to sing this great song. This song, the band's picked this song out. It's called Reckless Love. And it's like anytime I want to just hit somebody or hurt somebody verbally or physically, whatever that is, drive into the river, whatever that is, I have a whole conversation in my head justifying why they deserve that, right? And then I can do it. This song is about Jesus has so many reasons and could build an argument about what he ought to do to me to give me what I deserve, and yet he chooses to just give me grace and mercy and forgiveness. And I want to be more like him. So God, in this moment right now, none of us are thinking about a hypothetical or what other people ought to do. We all know what's going on in our hearts about something that, if we were honest, we're really angry about it. And God, we should be, because maybe it was wrong. But it's taken on a life of its own, and now the thing that we're angry about because it tried to take something from us, our anger has now taken our freedom. And we're locked up. And we've locked ourselves in, and we've locked everybody important out because all we can see is our anger. And God, we want something better. We want something really good. And we've tried to fix it ourselves, and up to this point, we haven't. But if you really are as good as you say you are, and you love us as much as you say you love us, and you're willing to help us as much as you say that you're willing to help us, then we want to listen to you. So God, over this next week, prepare our hearts to look at this thing that's just festering inside of us that we want healed. That's our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.